This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Richard Colon, a.k.a. Crazy Legs, the American b-boy from the Bronx, New York City, who was featured and credited in some of the earliest stories on hip-hop dancing in the mainstream press. In 1983, as president of the Rocksteady crew, you brought your dance over to here in London and Paris.
82.
82.
Yes.
And you also appeared in the movies Flashdance, Beat Street, and Wild Style, and the documentaries Style Wars and The Freshest Kids. Today you're involved in community outreach, dance theater productions, traveling the world for Red Bull, B-Boy Champs, and promoting your home country of Puerto Rico. You're here in London to MC the UK B-Boy Championships happening this Sunday at the Forum in Kentish Town. Crazy Legs, welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much.
It's great having you.
Thank you. That was a nice intro. It was pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's probably one of the better ones.
Yeah, that you've had. You've been coming here forever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
83, you came here and toured. Why did you want to come to London so early?
Well, that wasn't even something that I set up. It just worked out that way. We were brought out here by a woman named Cool Lady Blue, and she had this series of events in New York, which started at a place called The Grill. Then it went to Danceteria. These are all nightclubs, and then eventually the Roxy. And that gained so much success, especially after the Studio 54 era, when that was on the downhill. The Roxy became the hot spot. Places like the Roxy, the Garage, and being that the Roxy was featuring this happening, this thing that was happening up in the Bronx and Manhattan, which was like breaking, graffiti, DJing, MCing, all these things. She dealt with Europe One, and I'm not sure who out here, but they put together this tour, and it was the first time, and this is before it was really called hip hop. It was the first time there was a hip hop tour ever done where it featured all the elements in the manner that she did it. There was something that was done by Henry Chalfant prior to that, but not as intense.
Okay. And Bambaataa toured with you as well?
Yeah, it was Africa Bambaataa, it was Futura 2000, Don D. White, Rocksteady crew, the Double Dutch Girl, McDonald's Double Dutch Girls, aka the Fantastic Four. I'm not sure who else, I can't remember.
Do you remember what you thought of London and Paris when you came over here, and did it change you to see Europe as opposed to, the Bronx?
We really had no appreciation for anything like that. I think we thought the British accent was funny.
It is funny.
Like any ghetto kid at the time, we kind of had an ignorant perspective of the world. We were more concerned with take us to the hood, or where can we get some blackberry brandy and some beer and stuff like that. And when we performed, it was more about asking each other how we did on stage, as opposed to being concerned with, did the audience like it? And I think the audience liked that. Maybe they didn't understand what we were thinking, but whatever they saw, they liked. And it's weird that we really didn't care what they thought anyway.
Maybe that was part of the b-boy culture, of doing your thing, not their thing.
Yeah, or ignorance. And,
right.
It's not like we were groomed for stage. And when you're not groomed for stage, you don't really know how to work it in a manner that is really catering to the audience. So I guess there was a certain rawness that worked.
Mm. I watched a clip last night on YouTube from 1983 of you on David Letterman. And you're there and you're performing and you're talking with him. And I was just like, whoa, this is almost 35 years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess that was around 83 when it was just blowing up. Flashdance. Oh yeah, that just come out. Mm-hmm. Can you describe what that year was like for you? With just all that exposure, movies, Letterman. I mean, you seemed like you were keeping it together.
We were living double lifestyles back then. Double lives for all of us. We were still doing wild things in the streets while these movies were coming out. And but at the same time realizing what fame was. In 83, I was in Hawaii. And it was shortly after we did the David Letterman show, which I thought he was a smart ass anyway.
He was back then,
yeah,
even more so, right?
Yeah, I didn't really care for him. But I was in Hawaii in Waikiki, and I'm just sitting down on these rocks looking over the ocean. And then there's this preppy guy with his typical light blue shirt with his cream colored shorts, and a white guy. And he is sitting next to me. He said, "Hey, weren't you on David Letterman?" And I'm thinking, wow, I'm like, like 5,000 miles away from home. I'm on this small island, and this person just came up to me and recognized me from television. That was the first time outside of ghetto celebrity status that I realized that I was getting some fame. So that was, I think that was the first time I was, I guess, made to think that there was something bigger happening.
In retrospect, how did you guys deal with that fame from the 80s?
We had no appreciation for it, man. We were just trying to get girls and party, and we would do, again, since we weren't groomed for that, we weren't chasing that, we didn't know how to appreciate it, and we would show off. Yeah, we came to London, went to Paris and went shopping and came back home with clothing that was fresh and things that other kids didn't have, and other people looking at us like, "Oh, wow, where'd you get that?" And they, they can't get it. That's when shopping in another country was really different back then. You couldn't just get something in the way you can right now. So things like that were cool. But we really had no appreciation. We never really stopped to look. We never really took in culture. We never really took in the arts. We never really opened ourselves up to the bridge that was being built at the time in terms of bringing people together and understanding the differences, the nuances between cultures. And I think had we done that, we would have been able to sustain ourselves better before we had a downfall within the industry and kind of like shut down for a little while. But I don't know, but it's still something that served as inspiration for others, because there were other people who were probably looking at us saying, "Wow, these guys came out of the Bronx, I can do that too." Or Turkish people in Europe looking at us like, "Are they Turkish?" They didn't know we were Puerto Rican, so some of them thought we were Turkish or Arabic, whatever, and they were inspired because we were coming from the same kind of social, economic background as them. So it was kind of empowering to them to see us. And we had no idea that it was affecting people in that way. And these are things that I'm learning now.
Right, yeah. Look, I want to talk about kind of the pop in the 80s with b-boying and then disco coming, and I want to get your thoughts on b-boy culture today. But before we get there, I was wondering if you could tell us, Katona Avenue, 1977, when you first got down on the floor for the first time, and how that happened, and even what was it like being in the Bronx back then? Like what, you're talking about what you were like as a kid, but if you had to describe it to me and people listening, like what was it like?
Bronx in the 70s, run down, burn down, fun, dangerous, survival, hungry, needing clothes.
You said fun.
Yeah, with all that.
All those things is still fun.
And still having a great time. Parties, house parties, grown-ups having jam sessions. That's when the grown-ups of that era grew up in a system that still had music programs. So that was like the last real generation of musicians who learned in school, and it was very typical. So there were moments like that. I'd be out in the street all day, running around and playing all these street games that we had back then, but then come home on the weekend or on a Saturday night, and my family's there having a jam session with an upright bass and timbales and congas and organ and doing 5-part harmonies and singing like Latin jazz or doo-wop and things like that, and it was really cool. you know. But then there was also this functionality of the home within that. Whether you're in a single parent home, you know, being raised by 6 kids, or, you know, watching, you know, domestic violence being around you, alcoholism, drugs, you know, a lot of those things that existed. And then from time to time being evicted and then not having anywhere to live, trying to find a place to stay. You know, I remember things like that. And then with all that happening, and then you have the opportunity to be exposed to the Jam. And my cousin Lenny Len brought me to Crotona Avenue in the Bronx by 180th Street to a park jam. And he had been telling me all along, you gotta come to the Jam. People are rocking, people are breaking. And there was no such word as break dancing or hip hop. But so he would tell me all these things, and he brought me there. And I was a really shy kid. And I witnessed all these things. I saw writers, MCs, DJs, and people getting down in a circle. I was blown away. And I was there with like the corniest outfit you could possibly have.
What would that have been?
Embarrassing. That's what it would have been. Oh man. And everything, I don't know. You know, I wish I had a picture of that day, but you know, we were poor, so it wasn't anything new. It wasn't anything cool. But that day I saw the dance within this environment, I was blown away. I know I even got down on the floor to dance that day. I don't know if I got down on the floor or I jumped in a circle. Whatever it was, I jumped in a circle. Whatever I did was not good because I had no skill anyway, but I felt like I came alive that day. It was something that I really wanted to do, and my cousin started teaching me, and then 6 months later, I got so good at it, I started teaching him. So it was something that became very natural for me. It was something that opened me up, and it was the beginning of, I guess, establishing my lane.
Okay. Now, going out writing, what does that mean? It's some pastimes for the Bronx.
Bombing and writing. Bombing just means getting up, tagging up your name on every and anything. And if you're tagged up near your home, you probably had another, you know, several alias names that only your boys knew, so that you don't get in trouble from your mother. Especially, I would do things like write it. I don't even know if she knew it was me, but I would write in my own building that we lived in, tag up Whiz Kid. And you know, since it was graffiti, it wasn't my regular handwriting, so I would try to, you know, do things like that. And but it's fame. It's like Mr. Wiggles would say, graffiti is your lights on Broadway for someone from the hood.
Okay. So it's you up in lights. It's everyone recognizing you and your work.
And hopefully you earn a toy, because there are some bad shows that go on Broadway and then they get shut down.
So hopefully your stuff is good.
Yeah.
And your writing's good.
Yeah. So I was what you would call a motion bomber, a motion tagger. I would go on the trains while they were working, and I'd just be bombing the system and bomb your line, write your name, and just keep getting up.
Okay.
It's all about fame, but fame to your own people, not people outside. They didn't really matter.
Okay. Now, fast forward 6 years, as 83, you're on Letterman and all that stuff, but what happened from 77 to 83?
Wow. By the time 1979 came around, I was already getting much better. I had evolved the backspin from spinning maybe 2 times, 3 times around, and if you're small enough, you spun more, but I added a whipping motion with my leg, and because of the plant, I added the plant that you would do in the chair freeze and a way to whip around. And it created what's called the whip backspin, where you could whip your legs around and then ball up and then spin faster and spin more. And that was the beginning of power.
And you just came up with that when you were practicing one day?
Accident. Complete accident. I was actually, I over-rotated when I was going into a chair freeze, and it was on Crotona Avenue. And when I was practicing in this small hallway, and I went into that move, when I over-rotated, I didn't want my feet to hit the sides of the walls. So I balled up immediately. Didn't realize what I was doing because it was more defensive and trying to protect myself. And my cousin was like, oh shit, do that again. I was like, oh, do what? And he helped me to realize that I was onto something. And then that eventually evolved into what people call the windmill, but originally called the continuous backspin.
Right. And you're practicing in a hallway?
A hallway, yeah, tenement building.
Okay. Would you put cardboard down, or was
No. Cardboard didn't start
later.
until like we started hanging out in Manhattan, and we would hang out in what is now known as Rocksteady Park, and we would hang out in the back of the park where there were swings, and the rubber mats were under the swings for protection in case you fell off. But right next door to Rocksteady Park was also an appliance store, and we would take those boxes that were thrown out on the side of the building and put them in the back of the park under the swings, because number one, in the summer that black mat would get really hot, and it would kind of, I guess, break up into little pieces because of the wear and tear, and you get that on your clothes and you get dirty. So we would start putting that there just for practicing. But when it came down to us breaking and battling, we didn't walk around with cardboard. It's just like concrete, wherever. If you had a building, a wood floor, tiles, cement, it didn't matter. We didn't walk around with anything like that. That's just a whole misconception about, how we got down.
You just get down on the concrete, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, eventually people did start using cardboard, but we weren't about that. We were more the raw B-boys who were just like, let's go right here, right now.
Okay. It's crazy because the last 12 months, I've been trying to get the windmill, right? And I've been banging my head, trying to get it, getting so frustrated. And finally, I kind of got it, and now I'm trying to perfect it. But the reason I'm doing that is because of something you did in a hallway in Crotona Avenue.
By accident.
Almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, me over here in London, I'm trying to copy that meme and that move. Does that ever blow your mind when you think about that?
Yeah, it does. There was a point when I started dancing or being a lot more active again in the 90s or late 80s. My friend Jerry Fontanez, a.k.a. Fast Feet, he was a light heavyweight champ in kickboxing, and he was also a hip-hop enthusiast, grew up in the Bronx. He was like, yo, legs, Rocksteady for the 90s. I was like, no. I don't know. So anyway, he convinced me to do it. But as that started happening, and I realized there were some other people out there who were still breaking, and they wanted to battle, but they were doing my moves. I'm like, yo, but why do I want to battle these guys? It's like, they're doing my moves. What's going on? They want to battle me with my moves. And he told me, your legs, you have to understand, you created something that went around the world. You did something that people want to emulate around the world. You need to take pride in that. And it was the first time that I looked at it like, wow, okay, yeah. I really had an effect on the world where people want to do this move. So I learned to appreciate that.
Different perspective.
Yeah,
because when you and Ken were on Letterman, I think either Ken Swift or you both said, yeah, people are stealing our moves.
Yeah.
So I guess in the beginning, you're like, wait a second, that's mine. But
yeah. Well, the thing is with stealing moves, it was legal back then, but since there were so few moves, it was very obvious that someone was stealing your move. So what you wanted to do is steal a move and then recreate it so that people can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's the Jimmy D swipes, or that's just the Crazy Legs backspin. There was something significant about it that identified you with the person, as opposed to kind of like blatantly just doing something. But then you have to realize that if it's done widely enough, it just becomes part of the vocabulary of the foundation. And then you just have to submit and take pride that you contributed to the foundation of the dance.
Yeah. All right, so that's 79. What's 80, 81 like? Is it getting bigger?
80, I start hanging out in more of the downtown scene. I'm already battling people, trying to find more b-boys to battle because coming out of '79 when most of the b-boys were stopping, I was getting better and didn't have much competition out there. So I would battle someone, and that, if I beat that person, they would say, "Yo, I have this other person you should battle." And they probably want me to battle that person because they lost to that person and because they saw my ability coming from the Bronx to be more than the average person in Manhattan. I kind of became this mercenary b-boy where I would just continue to battle people. And then it just kind of like became like the Borg, where it's like you battle them, you take them on, and you become bigger. And sometimes that would lead to, and this is before I had a chapter of Rocksteady. I was in Rocksteady, but I didn't have any chapter. And I would see people who would come to be down with me, then start to form their own crews. And someone would come up to me and say, "Hey, but that's messed up. Why are they doing that?" And I would tell them, and it's weird because at a young age, I was already thinking, it's all right. Like, if they go start another crew, that's more competition for us. Let it happen. Leave it alone. It's all right. Mm-hmm. Disappointing, yes, because your childhood friends, your boys, whatever, people you think that are loyal to you are running off and wanting to do their own thing. Sometimes for good reason, because maybe they weren't going to get enough fame with the size group that I had. And so that was good because I think you can't become great at anything unless you have competition. What do you really gauge yourself by if there's no one to compete against? So you have to think of like New York City Breakers, Dynamic Rockers, another crew called Scrambling Feet from Queens, I believe they were. If we didn't have those crews to battle, Rocksteady wouldn't have been seen as who we ended up being, or as what we ended up being regarded as in terms of like one of the all-time great crews.
And now you say downtown, so now downtown Manhattan and that kind of artists and stuff like that.
Well, not even that far downtown. When I say, see, coming from the Bronx, when you say downtown, you're still talking about the Upper West Side.
Okay, right.
Okay. Spanish Harlem, things like that.
Okay,
That's
right.
downtown for us in the Bronx. And then, down there is like all the way downtown, But that led to me meeting Take One, who lived in Washington Heights. David Martinez is his real name. Just passed away a couple of years ago. But Take One introduced me to Henry Chalfant because he had demonstrated his dancing, and Henry Chalfant was interested in it. He had heard about it already because Martha Cooper had documented some kids who got arrested for dancing in the subway up in Washington Heights. So Take One told Henry that he knew Frosty Freeze and myself. Frosty Freeze and myself went down to Henry's studio in Soho, and we did a demo for him. And he then told us, "Hey, we're doing this event at this place called Common Grounds, and we'd like to have you part of it. It's called Graffiti Rock." And it was the first time that there was a presentation of breaking, graffiti, DJing, MCing as a happening. Like, this is what's happening uptown.
Okay.
That's what led to the whole downtown explosion of hip hop.
Okay. Do all of those go together in your mind? I mean, is there no
I think there's a genesis
okay.
that occurred. I think it was very natural because a lot back then it wasn't. There was no. You didn't have to be like. There was no requirement for like hip hop or anything like that. It's just like these are some of the things that we did in the hood. And there just happened to be people who did multiple things. A lot of times it was like you were trying to DJ, you were trying to b-boy, you were trying to write, whatever, and trying to find out what you were good at, or doing it and just looking horrible at it and thinking you were good.
Right. What about the music at this point? Because the name, well, you got to break down the name for me as far as b-boying and breaking, but the music was a big component?
Music is key because we were dancing to the music that came out of our parents' civil rights movement. We were dancing to music that represented expression, going against the grain, funk, soul, personality, character. So that's why there is so much character in the original B-Boys and B-Girls, because we danced to music that really meant something. It represented a movement, and we came out of that. So, and because there were so few moves back then, you had to have some character and style, because there weren't enough moves to kind of like create the visual dynamics that can, I guess, make someone believe that you're better than you are.
Okay.
You know, in terms of response to rhythm. You know, you could do a very acrobatic move, and because the move comes from the dance, people will think you're still dancing even if you're not rhythmic, even if you're not really in sync with the music.
Okay, all right.
So.
And getting that music to where the break beats would continue to play and continue to play, that was, I guess, the DJ's job, right?
Yeah, that was the DJ's job. We were all fans of DJs, and we were always trying to get those tapes that were recorded from live jams, because if you had a tape, and let's say you have a Cold Crush Brothers tape, one side of the tape might be the Cold Crush Brothers performing, but the other side of the tape might be Charlie Chase and Tony Tone spinning music for the crowd before the performance. So you had your music to practice to dance to, and then you had your music to sing along to, because the Cold Crush Brothers were going to be doing their show. So that's how we became more aware of the music. And then we would also, as little kids, try to look at what the DJ was playing, try to see the names of the songs, and let's say a song, Mardi Gras by Bob James. That would be called, no, I'm sorry. How about last night, or Last Night Changed It All, something like that. I had like a telephone ring on it.
Okay.
Last night changed it all. I really had a ball, but it had a phone ringing thing, almost as if someone's, answering the phone to talk to one of her girls, and we would just call that the telephone jam. Not knowing that it was called Last Night, and that's how we try to figure out songs.
Okay.
And that had a breakbeat on it.
Right. Would you practice to music, or was that just a luxury you couldn't afford?
Yeah, that was hard to afford, because that meant that you had to have a
movable
a
tape.
box.
Right.
We didn't call it ghetto blasters or boom boxes. We just called it a box, a radio. That was difficult. Okay. So.
Tell me about the cultures, because I think in the Fresher Kids it talks about, you come from a Puerto Rican family,
yeah.
Then you had the black guys, maybe a few white boys coming in here, and they all brought, like you said, a different kind of history of dance and the family, maybe music. How did that all mix together, and did each kind of culture contribute something?
I think, in New York, there was a huge intermingling between the African American community and Latino community. It was very rare when you had, let's say, someone who was Irish or someone who was Italian that was a B-boy, because crossing into those areas meant a lot of danger. You already had enough danger in your own community, but going into one of those areas, you're guaranteed to be chased out or something like that. So if you are fortunate enough to live in a community where I lived in, you had an intersection of Black, Latino, and Italian in the Bronx. And this is before I lived in Manhattan. And that there was a tavern called Lino's Tavern. It was a family who migrated from Italy over to the Bronx, and one of my best friends, Steven, also that was his family. So the community would gather there to watch sports, to mingle with each other, and you had a couple of wise guys in there. You knew that, and you had different kinds of people mingling in there, and that was a beautiful thing. So it was more likely that you might be able to either influence someone to dance like you, or you'd be inspired to understand what they're about. Not by design or anything like that, just what happen. And for me, that was my personal experience, because Africa Islam was actually one of the first. Africa Islam and my brother Robert Colon were the first b-boys I ever saw. And I thought it was just embarrassing what they were doing, throwing themselves on the floor. This is before I knew anything about a jam. But we were all in that area. And I think Lino's Tavern was a true breeding ground for multicultural understanding. But then you have someone like Mr. Freeze, who's French. His parents were in concentration camps. They came over from France whenever they came over. And then you have Mr. Freeze, this French kid who now lives in the Bronx. And then he became a b-boy, which was very, very rare and odd. Because when you do look at everyone who was a b-boy back then, it was very, you didn't really find anyone who was Caucasian as a b-boy.
Right. And what is a b-boy?
B-boy originally was a Bronx boy. And then it turned into, I guess it took on more meaning, Bronx boy, break boy, or Bronx girl, break girl. And that was it. That's what it was. A lot of people thought that b-boy meant a person that is within hip hop, and it's a general term for anyone that likes hip hop. But b-boying represented what we did on the floor. The dancers.
And what about the attitude that comes with it, the persona and everything? I mean, we took some pictures here earlier, and we're crossing our arms in certain ways. I mean, it has a heavy culture in it.
Yeah, I think the attitude just comes from, I guess, it evolves out of your surroundings and everything that you're living. And there were no theatrics about the character. It was very real. If you were acting in an aggressive manner, it's probably because you were an aggressive person, or you became that, or you were a defensive person because you knew you had to defend yourself if something jumped off. And, it wasn't part of the dance. It's who we were. And it just happened to come across in a dance because that's how we lived. So I try to tell people, look, if that is not who you are, the beauty of this dance is that you're allowed to be who you are, and you're allowed to create and think outside the box, but also, respect the essence of the dance while creating. But the theatrics of acting like you're ghetto or acting like you're a gangster, to me, it's just like, come on, man.
Okay.
There was no acting like anything, unless you're coming in from a situation where you're happy, or you're smiling and you're goofing around because it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get the attention of this girl, or yeah, I'm gonna show this girl that I'm the hard dude. What? Let her know who's around so she can check me out. We did things like that, or it really depended on the moment, but it wasn't really anything fake. If you are a funny person naturally, like there's this guy, Easy Mike, who was in Rocksteady. He was dope b-boy, but he was more on the funny side. He was always cracking jokes and goofing around, and that also showed in his dancing. But he was also a serious b-boy as well. He's a serious, funny b-boy.
Right. Very nuanced.
Yeah.
Right, but you got to be yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And
but you also have to respond to the music soulfully. Right.
And respond to your opponent in the battle. Why a battle?
I think we it's weird because, why a duel? You're testing your ability. You're practicing all week. And when you have nothing but the props you get, the respect you get for showing up and doing the best you can and coming up with something new every week, that's a beautiful thing, because you're going back home to nothing anyway. So it's some instant gratification based on a lot of hard work. And sometimes it's as simple as we just wanted to meet girls and we just wanted to get respect from other people.
Right.
Because there was really nothing else. There were no opportunities for shows, no music videos, no movies, nothing like that existed. So it was just really about being the best.
Right.
Like a boxer wants to be the best in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And the beauty of what we did back then was, in order to protect your reputation, you actually had to put it on the line. And win or lose didn't matter. You just couldn't be a punk.
So if there's a jam, you got to go in that circle.
Yeah, you're going to battle. You got to go.
Right.
Otherwise, you just, I don't know, you're just part of the crowd.
How many times you battling a week back then?
Not many. You practice all week and wait for the weekend. You would do things like, let's say when I was a kid, I would hear about someone, and if I heard you lived like 20 blocks away, meanwhile, 20 blocks I shouldn't be going because I'm so young, but I'm so hungry to dance, and I don't know if I wanted to be the best, but I just wanted to battle. And I would go to your neighborhood, don't know what you look like, I know your name, and I kind of know where you hang around, and I'd find you and say, yo, you B-Boy Brian? Oh yeah, you break? Yeah, you want to battle? And we go on the concrete, or we find somewhere to dance, and that's it. And that's how you gained your reputation. You would track people down. Or you would go to a jam because you would hear, like, yo, I heard this crew Zulu Kings is gonna be there, or I heard the Bronx Boys are gonna be there, whatever. And you knew that you wanted to go there and battle.
How could you spot a B-boy?
A lot of times the hat was to the side.
Why is that?
The hat was to the side. I don't know. It started before I started dancing, but I was emulating B-Boy Spy. When I first started dancing, he was just like one of the most notable B-Boys and one of the superhero B-Boys. And I wanted to be like Spy. But a lot of times, a lot of B-Boys were wearing their hats like that. That was a style. And sometimes that was the giveaway, but then there was also, let's say, a person who was kind of like a pretty boy dude. Then next thing you know, he's on the floor. It's like, oh shit, this guy's dope. You never expected him to be one of those dudes. So, I was a little kid just figuring all of this out. 10 years old, I'm like, wow, I'm just blown away. Everything is, in my mind, embellished to be more than what it actually was. So I think there are other people you'd have to interview to find out why that started.
Okay. So we're now getting into the early 80s, and now you're probably seeing that I can get paid for this, and that's probably changing things. You know,
we got paid, our first gig, I made like maybe $15. That was the gig we did with Henry Chalfant at the Kitchen Center for Performing Arts. And we were making money, and for us, the money we made, we treated as short money. It's not like we were looking at investments. I was probably the only guy in Rocksteady to get put my money into a CD fund or anything like that. But we didn't have any real money management skills. We were just spending it as soon as we got it. And sometimes there were people in Rocksteady who would spend it before they even got home from tour. And that was just talking to their girlfriends on the phone. So there were things like that. But I never really thought of it as us becoming rich or anything like that. Because we didn't think it was possible. I don't think we thought it was possible. You know, and we were too short-sighted to realize anything beyond the moment.
Okay. What about crime? Is it getting to a point where you're like, crime's still a possibility? It's still
Crime
something?
was always a possibility and always happening. There was no difference back then between us going to do a show in Soho and us being hungry after practice a few days later and needing to go rob someone or go snatch a purse or or maybe winter's coming, we need a coat, let's go catch someone on West End Avenue because there's money over there on West End Avenue in Manhattan, and more than likely some person would be wearing like a goose down jacket that'll keep you warm.
Right. So that's always part of the life.
Back then it was, not now.
Right, okay.
Obviously.
Right.
So we were still in survival mode because it's not like we were millionaires or anything like that. And even when we had the record deal with Virgin and Charisma, we were completely robbed on that one.
When was this?
That was 83 we signed the deal with them.
Okay.
But by 85 we were in court with them, and they were draining our money because how are you going to go up against Richard Branson and with a small amount of money in your bank account? And we had like $1 million deal, and I believe we each got about $7,000 out of that deal.
Sounds like the record business to me.
Yeah, but again, it's still something we had never expected in our lifetimes. And I think the hardest thing for us was not the idea that we didn't get to a certain peak, but after getting to a certain peak and not realizing where we were, and then having to come back home completely and realize, okay, those places you used to go to, like the Roxy and the places that you helped put on the map, you're now being told to get online, or having a hard time getting in, or realizing that, all right, there's a whole industry that's coming up now that you're not even a part of and not benefiting from, but you helped to create that industry.
Frustrating.
It was. I think at that time of my life, I was going through an identity crisis in the mid '80s.
Right. And because you guys blew up. You're in the movies. You're signing deals with Virgin.
Traveling the world.
82, 83, 84. And then someone decides in 84 maybe that breaking's not cool anymore.
Yeah.
And it's about disco. Mm-hmm. And now you.
Well, not disco. It became more about rap music and more pop music. Disco was pretty much dead by then.
Okay. And now you're going to those clubs that, like you said, you put on the map, and as opposed to being like, hey, Legs, get right in here.
Yeah.
They're like, get in line.
Yeah.
And you're like, what's going on here?
And some of us went back to school. Some of us got jobs. Some of us sold drugs. Some of us sold guns. And, those are the choices that we made, and that's why some of us aren't around anymore. And, you're looking at a bunch of kids who some took education a lot more serious than others. And then people who just felt like, I have to survive, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to survive. And then there were people like myself who juggled between both of them.
How'd you deal with that identity crisis? And when did you come out of it?
Oh, man.
Are you still in it?
I think in the 80s, late 80s, I was going through it. And it got to a point where I didn't want to watch MTV. I didn't want to watch anything related to music videos or anything like that. I just didn't want to hear about it.
Okay, why?
Because I felt like they're there because of us.
Right.
Not just us, but we were part of the reason why a lot of people existed in that zone. And
even rap existed.
Yeah, especially rap.
Because of what you guys did.
Yeah. Because we did the first tours that helped to expose all of hip hop. And, and it's weird because I know we had no appreciation while we were doing it in the first place, but I kind of felt, I felt like a sense of entitlement after, which is
pretty fair.
Yeah, but it also seems bitter.
Yeah.
And I realized that, and I decided I don't want to be that person.
Right. When the Freshest Kids, there's some interviews with you, and you could see it. You're pissed off.
Yeah, but in the early '90s, I had after watching so many people die after all that stuff, and so many of my friends, And I realized, all right, I want to do something that helps people. I want to do something that doesn't put people in the same predicament that we were in. I want to help kids to strive for their education. I want to be able to use hip hop like we were being guided to initially to be a tool to manipulate kids who have this common interest, you know, and teach them the art, but also hold over their heads that you have to get a good education. I'll teach you, but you have to do the right thing, because I didn't want them to go into the same direction.
Okay. So you kind of re-engaged in the early 90s.
Yeah.
At a point where you wouldn't watch MTV because it was just driving you
Well,
nuts.
90s I was better.
Okay, right.
I started throwing events.
Right, in the early 90s.
And doing volunteer work.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now, yesterday I had B-Boy Storm on here, and I know you battled him recently. We'll talk about that later. But he said he won, I think, Battle of the Year in Germany in '91, took the money he earned and went to the Bronx in search of the real deal, the culture. And it's this crazy thing, because it's this meme in Europe that's like looking at what you guys did, and then this whole culture grew out of Europe by watching what you did. I mean, that must boggle your mind sometimes. And then they go to the Bronx, and he said when he got there, he was trying to find you and trying to find the Rocksteady guys. And but he was like, they came in, they're like, well, we're doing all this breakdancing stuff, and he said that you guys were kind of like, well, that's kind of old news a little bit. No,
I didn't say that.
All right, well, tell me where it was in '91, and then what it was when these Europeans are coming over, doing what you were doing, 8 years ago.
Well, in 1991, we were already doing things again because we had performed with Jimmy Castor and the Castor Bunch at SOBs. We were doing things with the Source magazine. We were already, since '89, when my friend Fast Feet told me Legs Rocksteady for the 90s.
Right. That's that perspective shift.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So that and then in 91.
Be grateful they're using your moves, not be
right.
angry and jealous.
So in 91, Buck 4 passed away. And that's when I had already made the decision to go full force and do an event that summer during the New Music Seminar, where we wanted to bring it back to the park jams and recreate that vibe for all these people who are already going to be in New York and kind of piggyback off of the New Music Seminar crowd, which luckily we did, because a year or two after that, when we stayed doing the event, the New Music Seminar died and the Rocksteady anniversary was growing. So all those people who had their summer vacations based on a music festival or conference would still come, but now for the Rocksteady anniversary. But I don't know why Storm believes that we were like that. I think we probably looked at him like for me personally, growing up the way I grew up, any outsider coming in trying to get to know me, I'm gonna be a little standoffish, because back then, if he would have known everything that was going on in our lives, from shootouts, murders, and struggling, and just the lifestyle we came out of, he probably would have understand why we were like, a little standoffish, or like, who's this dude?
Who's this happy German coming in,
wearing
his fresh kit, and you're probably like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah. So I don't think, for some of us, I don't think we were the most welcoming, because number one, when we looked at a lot of Europeans at the time that we were getting back into it, we realized that a lot of people weren't focusing on the rhythm of the music, and there wasn't a funk to it. So we were like, they're breakdancers, we're b-boys. So we started to flip the word breakdance. And breakdance didn't come from hip hop anyway, so we never really used it. But as we saw that people were using the word breakdance, we were like, they're the breakdance, we're the b-boys. We try to turn the word breakdance into a derogatory word, but it was also a conscious effort by Mr. Wiggles and myself to say, well, if we're gonna bring this dance back, Rocksteady has a name, we have the connections with the magazines and media that we could use, and they're all in New York, so we have access to them. And if we're going to create some sort of interest, we also need a dialogue. So Wiggles and I were doing this program for PBS called Everybody Dance Now. and it did really well. It won some awards, but when we filmed it, we walked out of the building and said, why didn't we just say the word breakdance up there? We caught ourselves saying something that we never used to say. And that's when the discussion came about, bringing the dance back, because there are people doing it but don't have the clout to give it the recognition that we can give it. But we're gonna piss these people off and start correcting them and tell them it's not breakdancing, it's b-boying. If you're a breakdancer, you're someone that doesn't know how to dance anyway. You have no rhythm, you have no style, you don't have anything that allows you to be a b-boy except the moves. And the epitome of a b-boy was style and flavor and freshness and things like that. So fast forward to now, the b-boy champs started off as the breakdance champs. Now it's the b-boy champs.
Okay.
And b-boys, any real practitioner that understands the history and the art itself, no longer calls themselves a break. It took Young to be thinking like that.
Okay.
But we recognize what it was, and now we're a lot more mature, have a little wisdom. We can look at things a certain way. We're also still trying to understand who we are as a people of color, and how to make sure that things aren't co-opted, that we create, and just kind of like figuring out ways to become self-sufficient, and learn how to market ourselves and throw our own events, because those events that were thrown in the 80s were thrown by outsiders capitalizing off of the breakdance craze.
Right, and you can see a lot of that when you watch those old videos.
Yeah, and they're corny.
They're corny, and it feels like they're just like wheeling you
They're
on the
soulless.
stage. Right.
We were dancing, sometimes we'd be forced to dance to music that we didn't even like. So for instance, when we filmed Beat Street, when we actually did the filming of the battle, we weren't dancing to that music. We were dancing to like Give It Up or Turn It Loose and just funky music. Right. When they showed us that music that was made by Arthur Baker, I believe, we were like, oh, that shit is horrible. Like, we don't want to dance to that. But they laid it over what we actually did.
Meeting these two crews, and you got the dancing and the moves and stuff. Is it still a good representation, roughly, of what might have gone, or is it really whack?
It's corny, man. It's so corny. Look, I'll be honest, I never liked Beat Street. Beat Street has its moments with certain scenes, but for me personally, I look at it and I know what it represents in terms of inspiration and for culture and dance and things like that, but I look at a movie based on the script and the acting, So I've never really liked Beat Street. I never really liked many hip-hop movies because I want to be entertained by their ability to act as well. And the script has to be written really well.
Okay.
For instance, on the plane on my way over here, I could have been watching The Get Down, but I chose to watch The Green Mile.
Okay. Because you didn't like The Get Down.
No, I think the acting was kind of corny, and it's...
So The Get Down was like this $25 million production that Netflix...
250 million.
250 million?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus, that Netflix
Something
paid
like that.
for.
Yeah.
And, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I watched some of it. It kind of shows the genesis of DJing, b-boy culture in the Bronx in the 60s, or it tries to with a whole storyline. What did they do right or wrong there?
I watched the first 90 minutes of it and never watched it again.
What didn't you like?
I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the acting. I didn't like the fact that the continuity with the slang was off. Continuity with even back then, if you had an afro, you didn't have a lineup. There was no such thing. So there are these things I'm looking at.
A lineup, what's that?
Lineup, like this,
right.
an exact line when you get your hair cut.
Right.
And back then it was, we were all rough around the edges.
Okay.
So there were things that they were doing that just didn't make sense. There were the people who are supposed to be actors who are supposed to embody exactly what's going on, but they're using current slang. And it's like, no, it's a timepiece. Respect the time. Don't fall into your own slang because in real life you want to remain cool because you don't want people to think you speak that way. you know, or you're coming across as this old school dude now. It's like, no, it's a part. Become the part, you know. So become the period of time that they're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know Grandmaster Flash was involved in behind the scenes with some of that stuff. You didn't get the call from Netflix on that to help a little bit, but you wish you would have to give them some context.
You know, I got a call and I never got a follow up, and then there was just some other politics that were going on behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of, and I believe that someone was misled into believing that I didn't want a part of it, and I never even had any dialogue with anyone about it.
Okay.
On that level, so it was just like I was reached out to, and someone tried to put a block and kind of lied to the producer, saying Legs doesn't want anything to do with this.
Right. But you would have given them that cultural context.
I would have heard him out just to see where it was going, because I'm very much about the history, and from the perspective of I like to be a teacher-student. Because since we're still trying to figure out things in terms of perspective and geography, when it comes to things that were happening around New York City, there are a lot of different perspectives. So anyone that's going into that situation as kind of like absolute about the history is probably feeding some self-serving story.
Okay. You mentioned b-boy earlier and breaking, and I want to clarify this and get your thoughts on it, because a lot of people watching that are in the community, and they always want to hear from, OGs like you, and what you mean when you're like, okay, a b-boy is about style and character and this, and it's not about moves. So in the essence, and what should b-boying be in your mind?
In the essence of the dance, it relates back to, first you have to have a relationship with the music. Second, you got to be yourself. Third, you have to be creative as you're learning, so that as a person doing a dance that's about individuality, there's something about your dance that is going to cause people to think only of you, because that's your style. And that could come from how you deal with your emotions, what's happened throughout your day, why you want to even dance, things like that are personal to you. Not becoming a character that you witness someone else being. And then, I think just to a certain degree, well, for us back when we all started doing this, I mean, we were poor, but whatever we could do to be stylish was also important. And I know there's, you kind of have to work with the times as well when it comes to fashion. Mm-hmm. But
you should show up dressed to perform. Or,
yeah.
You see guys roll in now, like they look just like they came to the laundry basket.
Their pockets hanging out, their sweatpants, and again, it's kind of like when I say create within the essence of hip hop, kind of create within the essence of like, all right, this came from people who were struggling to have something better. Don't bring it backwards.
Right.
There were people who say, oh man, I wish I could be there back in the days, or hip hop needs to be like what it was. If it were like it were back then, it would be better. I'm like, yeah, but I also have to rob you after the jam, or you have to also open yourself up to being, mugged and beat down, and you really want to take it back. You understand the climate that we grew up in? Yeah, I think there's more of a human element than it is about any hip-hop culture or b-boying or anything like that. I think these are things that we use as tools, as confidence builders, even for exercise, but I don't walk around thinking, and I always say this, I don't walk around like life is one big episode of Beat Street. There are more things, even with how I'm using hip hop and even other forms of music, whether it be salsa, house music, to do what I'm doing in Puerto Rico. I realized, okay, these art forms can be used in a manner to help other people. And if that means, during the time of crisis in Puerto Rico with the economy and the $80 billion debt that they're going through, if I could use my name and my ability to bring people together and help to promote tourism on the island and bring money to the island that otherwise wouldn't be there, especially during down season, I'm helping to do something that's bigger than just the art, but by using the art.
Right, right. And you're taking people down there, and you're taking over one of the resorts down there,
Yeah.
and you're doing like, kind of like just classes and stuff like that in all these different dance forms,
It's
right?
classes, salsa, hip hop, and by the way, it's called Puerto Rock Steady. But yeah, there's different workshops of dance. There's yoga. There's parties. There's beach life. There's outreach that we do with the Boys and Girls Club in Isabella. We do some programming in there in terms of education, wellness, health, fitness, things. Yeah.
What's the current state of B-Boy? You travel the world with Red Bull. You're here for the UK champs. You're emceeing and judging too?
I'm hosting.
You're hosting.
I'm hosting,
Okay,
yes.
gotcha. You know, we see everyone out there, and I know you tour and Sway, and you know Sway as well, and you're all over the place. Where are we now? You know, where are your thoughts on the power moves, and is it coming back from there, and is there style, or where do you see it, and where does it need to go, and who are some of your favorites, and who do you hate?
For the current state of the dance as a dance, I believe it's gotten to a point where there's more of a balance between the foundation and the power and the musicality. So I think it's at a better place, and I think maybe an older school, another dude from my generation might disagree with me because maybe self-righteousness or because they grew up watching it, and their memories are their memories. They're never gonna let go of that, and that's cool if that makes you feel better. But you also have to be respectful of the next generation and their voice, and allow them to live the same way you had your opportunity to do. You know, all those things that you did when you were a kid, and just remember that there's always a generation that's going to have their voice, and you kind of have to respect that. There are a lot of B-boys and B-girls that I love. A.T. from Flomo Crew is an amazing B-girl. You have El Nino from Floor Lords Crew. You have Why Not from Rocksteady, who's just like the master at top rocking and style and musicality. So there are a lot of people out there that I really like. That's just to name a few. Even on the UK side, you have Sunny, who is probably the person who's been most effective in reinvigorating the UK b-boy scene, because there have been many b-boys throughout the years, but the UK is kind of weird when it comes to consistency with its b-boys and b-girls. There seems to always, there used to be a point where it'd be good for 3 years, then it'll drop for 3 years. And there was never much consistency out here. And I think that's probably because you don't have any, I don't think the b-boy scene has true support, not even from its government, you know, and recognizing that it's an art form and it's something that the UK can represent on a global level. You know, as far as, you know, having great dancers. But the direction of it, I mean, it's going into the Youth Olympics in 2018.
How do you feel about that?
I was indifferent about it at first, and I kind of had, I put a statement out there kind of questioning it, but out of curiosity and also not being judgmental about it because I didn't have enough information. And then I came to the idea of, this is gonna happen anyway. Do I want to watch it fall apart from the outside, or would I rather be in on the inside and try to make sure that we get some of the things that would be beneficial to the culture, the art, you know, while it's, you know, going to, no matter what, be something that's in the Olympics. Eventually, you know, it'll go from, you do this, we have to make sure that the community outreach is there, going into places where people are not on an equal playing field, to have the opportunity to develop their skills, to take to be a part of the future of these games are dealt with, and they're given that opportunity to get on that equal playing field, because at the end of the day, this dance was created by people who are less fortunate. And I think that it would serve them best if they make sure that they're just doing the right thing, man. Don't just take this and make it about, the way you have all these little dance moms out there, getting their kids into something that was created by someone else or some other culture, and you're just trying to get some fame off of it. It's like, come on, man. There's a whole community of people that do this and don't care about the fame, and they just do it because that's all they really have. And I want to make sure that those people are dealt with, and we create opportunities and outreach for them.
Okay, understood. And when it came to the State of B-Boy, as far as I understand what you just said, maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was going too far to the power. It was forgetting the style, the top rock, the fact that there's a beat and you got to feel that beat. It was more gymnastic stunts. And now we're seeing that come back to where these guys are starting to appreciate that there's all of these different aspects of it, and you have to embrace it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Europeans. Let's also talk about your battle with Storm in Russia. You're over 50. Why do that battle, first of all? And what happened, and what were your thoughts?
First, they called me up, and they said, hey, would you want to battle Ken Swift at the V1 battle in St. Petersburg? I'm like, sure, why not? That would be great hip-hop.
For people that don't know, who's Ken, and why would that be interesting?
Ken Swift is a former member of Rocksteady who people have taken sides over, like me or him, when it comes to something that has nothing to do with anyone but me or him. And people feed into the idea that there's a possibility that we may have more beef with each other than we actually do. And I think they because of Ken Swift's history with Rocksteady and his level in the game as being one of the top dogs of all time, it was interesting. And for me, I thought it would be good hip hop.
Right.
It would be give some people something that they might want. But I was also thinking we could do this battle, but maybe even at the end of the day, set an example and shake hands in front of everybody and give each other a hug or whatever, and get past whatever it is that they believe it is, and certain things that actually are, and put out a good example for people out there. And, because there are a lot of people who are affected by the fact that him and I he's no longer in Rocksteady, or we don't do anything together, and things I believe they should anyway. It's just, got nothing to do with you.
What is the beef?
It's just way too much to get into, and I'd rather not.
It's years and years and years.
So, yeah, and I'm not trying to go there.
I'm guessing you both just have different opinions of what the thing should be.
There's different opinions. There's I'll stick to that. There's different opinions.
All right, cool, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you thought it would be a nice
I think it
move
would
to
be
show.
nice.
Okay. Because everything you do now, you have to think that everyone's watching you, right?
Yeah, you have to.
Which is also...
It's being responsible.
Yeah, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing means that it makes you be your best, right? And think of the bigger picture.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, being your best while knowing you still have flaws is difficult, and I think that's a constant struggle with anyone. We're all human. I mean, I would worry about a person who acts as if they don't have flaws more than someone who would just say that they have flaws. But anyway, Kenny had declined to do the battle. Don't know why. And, well, I actually heard reasons why, but, publicly no one knows why. And then they asked me, okay, well, would you battle Storm? I'm like, yeah, that sounds interesting too. Let's do it. I think the fact that Storm would come out and satisfy a crowd that loves him with how he dances and make my side happy. And it became, once we had decided to do it and we started training, a month before, we started getting so many well, me personally, I started getting so many people contacting me like, yo, you guys already won just by what you're doing. You know, and it was a struggle to get to that point because of training while injured and things like that, and trying to do something and not telling people that you're actually injured because you don't want to make any excuses, and also my pride. You know, it's difficult, you know, but at the end of the day, I think it was good for the scene. It was good for old school people. And it was good for people who want to talk shit too and just be like, oh, Crazy Legs sucks or Storm sucks. Or, you know, whatever gets their juices going.
Right. As long as they're talking about b-boying. That's the goal, right?
Yeah, yeah. And if it inspires, like for me, my reason for doing it was good hip hop, bring awareness to Puerto Rico, and inspire people who are getting up there in age to not give up on themselves and strive towards keeping themselves fit and healthy.
Okay. What happened in the battle? What surprised you? And how was it for you training and then performing?
Well, my goal was
you guys did 7 rounds,
to train
right?
for 10 rounds. I don't know. We went 6 or 7. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. So, number one, I'm battling this young dude. He was 46. I was 50.
Right. Word.
But I wasn't gonna give up.
Right.
And I was saying to myself, you know what? This is great, and this is, you know, we both trained to be here. You know, I know Storm has neck injuries. I was just hoping he wouldn't do head spins. Not because I'm worried about it, but about him doing head spins against me, but I was more worried, like, I hope this guy doesn't like get ahead of himself and hurt himself on the floor and things like that. And you know, I had a cyst in my wrist, and it had flared up that day, so I had to wear a brace to be able to put pressure on my hand that day. So that was surprising because I was hoping that wouldn't happen. And by I would say the 3rd or 4th round, I was gassed out. I was like, what the hell am I doing? And that was pretty much it.
And he did spin on his head.
Yeah, and I'm like, this guy's crazy. What are you doing, man? This ain't worth it.
Yeah, he said he stopped in the 90s training those moves because he jacked his neck, and he said he only did them when he performed.
I stopped doing head spins because I have herniated disc.
Okay.
So it's like after a while, you know, just thinking smart.
Right, so he pulled all that out. But good, you guys hugged at the end, and it was a good show of unity to everybody, right? That was really popular. It got a lot of people talking.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think it ended up being better than what a battle between Ken Swift and myself would have been. Maybe there would have been a more aggression towards each other, which could have taken it to a different level between me and Kenny. But you know, but at the same time, Ken Swift is one of those people that I've looked at and been inspired on the spot, you know. So I feel like I've done a lot more against Ken Swift because he does inspire me.
Okay. Storm doesn't.
It's different. It's different because Storm is a product of us. You know, Kenny is my peer, a true peer, and sometimes when your peers are there, it's like, you know, if you have Gladys Knight and, oh God, what's the other woman, the other diva?
Aretha Franklin, no.
Gladys Knight and Aretha Franklin, yeah.
Okay.
If you have both of them on stage, they're both probably gonna be intense if they're having solos or if they're ad-libbing, you know, it gets pretty intense. But then, you know, if you throw Mariah Carey up there, who's another great voice and a diva, it's still not Aretha and Gladys. Difference, you know. Same thing was happening in Japan at the same time, but there was less information coming because you didn't have the internet moving like that, and the videos weren't moving like that. Unless you went there, you wouldn't know. So I think, you know, it's not even just giving credit to people in Germany, but you have to recognize France, you have to recognize Japan, because they were all doing the same thing.
Were they keeping it
just-
alive? At
They
some
were
point?
keeping it alive to a certain point, but they didn't have the name recognition, they didn't have the connections, and that's understandable. They didn't have a large fan base in the 80s, and I guess when their cruise started, well, I don't know when their cruise started, but they just didn't have the opportunity to do what we could do coming out of New York and having access to the press.
Right.
But what they did was great because they helped to evolve the dance in areas that had stopped already in other places, and more power to them. And thank you for your contribution.
Right. You're going to be, I know you judge battles around the world. You're going to be seeing a lot of battles here from people from Japan and Korea and France and Germany and everywhere. What do you look for when you judge?
They'll still be judged judged for their attempt, and it's like, no. Did you execute your move properly? Did you dance through your move properly? Did you complete your set? Was it dance from beginning to end? And if it's a close enough battle between the two, I try not to do a tie. If it's that close, you're looking at who slightly messed up or who had the better clothing.
I respect that,
Because you only have so much time for these battles, and you're looking at a lot of money for rentals and all these things. So if you keep doing tie, next thing you know, you've thrown a promoter over budget because you can't make up your mind.
Yeah, okay.
Or find a reasonable way to justify your.
I hear you in what a b-boy from the Bronx is, but they shouldn't, right?
I mean, they could do whatever they want, A lot of people think I'm arrogant because maybe I'm not as talkative to them, but they seem to forget that, just because you see me on a platform and you've watched videos and all these other things and you think you know me well enough to come up to me and treat and have dialogue with me as if we've known each other for 10 years, it's kind of odd because I believe in a true friendship. And if we're gonna act like that, let's build up to that. Don't be upset with me just because I didn't instantly say, hey, let's go hang out now.
Yeah, you're from the Bronx.
Yeah,
you'll always be that kid, right?
There's a part of me that's still leery. Then there's also a part of me that has to worry about what's this person's intention, a motive. Do I have to worry about this person in any way? Because I get people coming up to me who may not like me for something they made up in their head, or maybe they have a legitimate reason. So, that's what I think that's one of the bad things that comes with being associated with hip hop. You're standoffish, and also people want to try to test you.
Right, and you've had that happen probably a lot.
Yeah, so you kind of have to feel it out, assess it, and ease into it.
Right. Okay. Back to the Ivy League universities, Cornell.
Yeah.
What was it like being there? What were you doing for them? Is it weird going to class with your son? You know what I mean? It's like being on the same campus.
Well, I'm also part of the advisory board for the Cornell Hip Hop Collection. So that's where that relationship started.
Which Bambaata's, they got all his records, right?
With his Wild Style archives. And that's how that started, that relationship. They acquired my archives, which I had for over 30 years, holding stuff, keeping it really well preserved.
Pictures, music.
Pictures, magazines, newspapers, a lot of things that were some of the first things ever put out on hip hop.
Okay.
Especially with the documentation of the commercialization of it.
Okay.
Contracts.
Okay.
Immunization cards.
Really?
For like when you travel and you get your vaccinations. Anyway, usually they like to invite people who have given up their archive to come and do master classes, workshops, or whatever. And going into the situation I went into recently was a little different because you're dealing with people who are there out of curiosity. Some people have to take it because their professor told them to take the class. It was open to students as well as the public.
Okay.
So it was a mixed crowd, and not everyone there was necessarily a true dancer, and you had different levels.
Okay.
So
You were
had
teaching physical practice as well.
Yeah, so it's physical, the choreography and kind of like my own theory in teaching when it comes to the dance, and them executing things. But we also had videos that they watched just to get a sense of how we were when we were kids and what the environment was like back then.
What did you play for them?
The
Get Down?
No, we played this documentary called Rocksteady. It was done by 2020 Films Limited, which was a company here in the UK. Okay. And then there was another documentary that we did in the Bronx. I'm not sure who filmed it, but it's pretty old. And I just wanted them to get an idea of what we were like as kids, and to see that, we were wild, but at the same time we were shy. And when it came to our dance, we were aggressive. And it was good. Each class had like 40 to 70 students.
Okay.
And usually there's a big drop off after the first two. And we averaged straight through about 60.
Okay.
Which is great.
So it was enjoyable.
Yeah, it was. I had a great time there. And it was cool to have my son, meet up with me every time for dinner, before class, when he's away. He sat in for my classes too, which was nice.
That's cool.
He gets to understand me a little more.
Was it always important that your son study hard or go to a good university? Why?
It was important because I wanted him. I got into, and I told him when options. And then if they don't understand, then he can explain. This is just something we did because there was nothing else. Right. And then when you're being raised in a home that's pretty dysfunctional and you don't have anyone there to go over your homework with, you want something better for your child.
Yeah. God forbid you step outside here and get hit by a bus. I don't want it to happen. But God forbid, and people watch this right now and they got to go on what you say as far as what's the future of b-boying, like where should it be in 10 years and 20 years and all that stuff. And we've seen, a lot of companies getting involved, Relentless and Red Bull, and a lot of money being thrown, Silverback, even the champs this weekend. It's going kind of this way. Where do we need to make sure it doesn't go? Or if it's going to be on your watch, what do we have to be careful of? Because you've seen it commercialized once and then left out to dry, and now slowly come back. It sounds like you've had a little more control over that perception. Yeah. Where do you want to see it go? Where do you want to make sure it doesn't go?
You have to be careful with it getting co-opted and saturated. You want to make sure that it maintains the integrity that it deserves because of what it came out of and what it did for so many people. And it's weird because I say what it did, but I think it's more about what it represented for people who wanted to make a choice and say, you know what, I like this dance, I'm going to get into it. I'm also a stick-up kid and I do fucked up shit, but I'm going to get into this dance. But the fact that they made that choice to get into that dance meant that they had to develop their skills. And if they were spending time developing their skills, all those other negative things that could have been happening became less. And so that enabled us to become better people, even if we still did a little of the nonsense. It just gave us a better opportunity to be creative, a better opportunity to meet people, greater understanding of other cultures as we began to travel. And because of that common interest in ability or wanting to learn how a person did something, the cultural barriers that would have existed because of the barrier allows sitting here with you, right?
Right. Yeah, true. True. And you got b-boys and girls from all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Some that don't even speak the same language that come together, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's like the original form of expression, right? Physical expression, not
Yeah.
verbal.
You know, when we first started traveling, what people took to when we went to like places like Paris and Japan was the visuals. Because they didn't understand, even the people over here didn't understand what the MCs were really saying because there was slang involved, there was the accent involved, there was the beats involved. So they didn't really capture that. They knew something was happening, it had to be explained. But the dance is interpretive, the art is interpretive. So it allowed them to kind of like be a part of it in a sense and not have to decipher the words and the metaphors.
Right. And you want to see this stay pure. And I think I'm starting to understand you with the Olympics, because most people would say, hey, Olympics, let's do it. But you're like, well, let's only do it as long as it stays b-boying and doesn't turn into something else.
Right. But also, I think it has to make sure that it's culturally aware and have a nice element of giving back to the community and reaching out to those kinds of communities that something like this would have been born out of and give and kind of like pay it forward.
Yeah. I just want to finish by asking a couple questions about you as far as, how you've been successful over the years. Was there anything that you adopted, maybe even in the early days of your training or your routine or your diet or your mindset, that allowed you to just keep getting better and better and better? Is there anything, like thing that you remember, like when I did this, things improved, or even how you trained?
I think some of my greatest influences in terms of not giving up are important. When you look at people like George Foreman, Evander Holyfield, Bernard Hopkins, I look at people like that who were successful at a much older age within a field that would have dictated that they should have quit a long time ago. I look at that and I look at that element of being a warrior, and I think that those are the kinds of things that I relate to. And then I look at it and I say, if they could do it, I could do it. Or if I'm in the gym and I look over to, and I'm not injured and I'm training properly, if I look to the right and there's an old person there, I'm saying that person cannot be better than me. If I'm looking at a younger person that's in better shape, I'm like, oh hell no, I'm not. I need to do something better than him too. So my sense of healthy competition is good. So I like things like that.
And that's inspired you to get through the injuries,
Yeah.
to get through the times where you want to quit, the hard times.
Yeah.
Just look at those inspirations. I had a guest on here, his name is Kevin Kelly. He actually started Wired Magazine back in the day, and he said, Brian, you're only as old as the last time you changed your mind. And I was wondering, what has Crazy Legs changed your mind about in the last 6 months or a year?
Things and then I got to a point where I just said, you know what, scared money doesn't make money. I'm gonna ride with that this year. And when I decided to just go full on into it, I think this year we're turning a corner where the community benefits as well as, hopefully I won't be taking a loss, and things start to materialize when it comes to the idea of down the road having thousands of people flying in to Puerto Rico and really making this a true success that benefits everyone on the playing field.
Okay. What's something we would be surprised to learn about Crazy Legs?
I don't watch b-boy videos. I've never really been one to watch videos of myself or anyone else.
Okay. A lot of fighters are like that too.
Oh yeah?
They just don't. You would think they would do it all the time, but they don't. It's the same with you.
Yeah, I don't do it.
Okay. What keeps you awake at night?
Anxiety about what I didn't follow up on. and and then making sure my son has everything he needs. And kind of like you also have to come to terms with the idea that there is mortality in dance, and you have to come to a realization where you could still be physically fit and in great condition, but the abuse you put on your body, you better be careful with as you dance. Or come on, let's back. You know, do you really quit culture? It's like asking someone, will you ever stop dancing salsa? It's like part of being Puerto Rican.
Right. What's your obituary going to read? You know, when that happens, hopefully, long time from now, what are they going to say about Crazy Legs?
I don't know, because I don't. It's probably something to ask someone else, because I don't. You know, we don't write our legacy. We can do whatever we want, but our legacy is written by someone else. So I would say maybe, hopefully it says, say what you want. He can't hear you anyway.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I always ask everyone a couple questions here at the end. I'm going to hit you with these. If you could pick up the phone and make a call to the 20-year-old Crazy Legs, that young guy, who I guess this would have been kind of late 80s, so it would have kind of calmed down after that craziness. And if you were going to give that young man a bit of advice, what would you tell him?
Finish college.
You didn't?
No.
You wish you had?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've also been able to do things that people go to school all their lives for and never get to do them until they're like less agile, less physical, less energy. I've been through 5 passports in my life. I'm about to get my 6th one next year. I have a whole hell of a lot of wisdom based on life experiences that people with a PhD wish they had.
A dancer could be from Swift, could be from someone you met over the years,
Yep.
traveling, that kind of thing. You got it, right?
Yeah.
What is it?
I was doing a commercial for the '84 Olympics. It was for Coca-Cola. And I met this man, they flew me out first class, which was great for me back then. We did it in Italy. And on the way back, I was talking to this conversation and being present in the moment and not it being about me. And he goes, look, you know, you're gonna come across a lot of people. Don't be sad about the fact that you're never gonna see them again. Just be happy that you met them and you had that great experience to look back on.
Yeah. That's like a real lesson in being present,
Yeah.
kind of grateful,
Yeah.
and not thinking too far in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good one. Last part of that question. To that 20-year-old that's watching us right now, listening to us later on iTunes, all that stuff, who wants to be Crazy Legs, who wants to be the Red Bull BC1 champion, who wants to be the greatest breakdancer in the world, B-boy, what advice do you give to him or her?
Have a backup plan. It sounds like the same old thing you hear from every other person older than you, but it's real. And if you're really about hip hop and you think that's what you're gonna do all your life, and how do you empower it, you know, without all the tools that you need? How do you, you know, live up to hip hop for life or B-boy for life? Because there's gonna come a point when you can't do it, and then that's when you're really tested as to whether what you were saying was bullshit or not. You know, are you giving back to the community? Did you establish something that allows you to become self-sufficient because you dedicated so much time into your dance? Did you prepare for when you get injured? You know, did you make money at a big competition and invest it in something? Buy a home, invest your money, do things like that, because you're gonna have kids one day and they may not want to dance, and you're gonna have to take care of them.
Right. Send them to university, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Legs, it's been a real pleasure
Thank
sitting
you.
down with you. You know, preparing for you. I had already seen a lot of these documentaries a year ago when I
Yeah, you're
started-
one of the few people that prepared.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Journalists don't prepare anymore.
Right? They don't.
No.
Well, I started kind of b-boying about a year ago, you know, so as I learned the moves, then I had to learn the culture, and I got some kind of old school guys that are teaching me. So for them, it's like, you got to know why these things happen. So I watched the movies, and I actually saw you at UK B-Boy Champs a year ago before I knew anything about this stuff, and I saw you MC or host as
I always
well.
talk shit when
Yeah,
I'm
you do talk a lot of
emceeing.
shit. And look, it's important that we understand where you came from, and you know, and why you might be a little standoffish with people, and you're from the Bronx, and also people know you and they think they know you because you've done all this crazy stuff. And also to say someone, oh, you're a legend, like that's a lot of pressure, and that kind of gets old after a while. And I'm sure as you gotta move forward with it.
I just say thank you. I'm uncomfortable when someone calls me a legend.
Right.
And I say thank you, but that's about it. I don't really know how to respond to that.
Yeah. There is no response to that.
I don't call myself a legend.
People look to you because, you know, you are the guy, and I know you sacrifice a lot of your personal space and stuff to kind of be that guy for the community, and it's something that I recognize and a lot of people do, you know, because you could easily not be in that limelight and it would be a little easier, but you are, so you got to take all the heat and the stuff, and if you do a battle here or there, you know, you got to take all that on your shoulders, and I understand that. I think a lot of people do too, so I just want to say thank you for everything you've done. It's amazing having you here in London. I met Hooch a couple days ago, and I was like, what? You've been doing this since 96? What? You've been flying Crazy Legs over since 96? So 21 years in a row you've been coming over here?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
crazy.
I've been here over 40 times.
Man, that's crazy. I just don't think people recognize how much you travel and go, you know, hit the pavement to do all this stuff. So I just wanted to thank you for that stuff. Thanks for coming on, letting me inside your brain. I think a lot of people will maybe get to know you better than they have before, you know, because a lot of times a 2-minute video here and 2-minute video there, they think they know what's going on, but maybe now they know you better.
Yeah,
So,
you know.
And if not, it's okay too.
Yeah, it's
right?
all good, man. You know, there's always going to be someone who can watch this and still not want to take it in. So I feel bad for them, you know, because that probably carries over in other aspects of their lives.
Yeah, well, we can just keep talking. So,
Yeah,
right?
it's all good.
On London Real, we say it's about the journey. I wish you well on yours.
Yes,
Thanks for being here, and let's hook up sometime in the future. Cool, man.
Thank you. Yes.
The critics who always speak behind my back, maybe I want to hear them remind me he's back, the great pretender. I hope this time he gets hurt. I love these guys. They give me fuel. If you want to reach your objective, you want to achieve it, you're gonna have to be obsessive. You're gonna have to be obsessed. Feel what you do. Feel it. If you're not feeling it, it doesn't matter.
It's Chris Eubank Jr. How do you explain his prowess in the ring?
Junior has that obsession, that genius, that magic. Genius is obsession, but it's in one area.
You studied the sweet science for so much of your life. How do you walk away from it? Do you miss it?
You can't walk away from it. I am it.
What was
I stood the mask. Must be London Reelers. That's